No honors, no respect.
Here comes the old man.
Kiev in 3 days turned into a stream of coffins flowing back to Russia.
My husband died. We're very grateful to you.
And there aren't enough coffins to go around.
A whole candid full of guys.
They brought parade uniforms with them to march down Kreshchatek, but now they're returning home in wooden overcoats. Their parents and children are fighting for compensation, while their wives are looking for new husbands so the business doesn't stall. Why has the war turned into a chase for profit, and what are Russia's real losses? Watch our special report, The First Million, the cost of Russia's war against Ukraine.
So many guys. A month ago, there were 7 rows.
Krasnoyarsk, 4,000 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. The rows of graves are growing before our eyes. Before February 2022, it was just an ordinary Russian regional center. A river port, tons of factories and industries. Just live, work, and enjoy life, as they say. But believing in Putin's propaganda about mythical Nazis in Ukraine, bloodthirsty NATO at Russia's doorstep, and lured by promises of millions, thousands of Krasnoyarsk residents decided to reinvent themselves as war criminals, murderers, rapists, and looters, only to later join the ranks of the local cemetery.
Across the road from the car, there are 6 rows, and that area was completely empty before.
This picture is now typical across all Russian regions. Fresh graves and identical dates on the crosses. Here's Tula.
New graves. 2024. Date of death. Also 2024. A pretty creepy place. It's starting to feel eerie being here.
And this is Tolyatti. Once, they built Siguli cars here, which the entire Soviet Union drove. Now they plan to produce Shahid drones to kill Ukrainians and are expanding cemeteries.
The first Alley of Glory in Tolyatti, and this is already the second Alley of Glory in Tolyatti. Over there, at the Muslim cemetery, there's a third Alley of Glory. These are the boys. Just a month ago, there were only 9 graves here. That was a month ago. Today, there are already 2 rows.
Irkutsk, to accommodate all the 200s, they're cutting down a century-old forest.
On the outskirts of Irkutsk, there's a burial site growing faster than others. Here, at the Alexandrovskoy Cemetery, they bury those killed in the war against Ukraine. We've identified 216 military graves. That's 4 times more than during our first visit a year and a half ago, though the number could be higher.
Russia has lost over 1 million people in Ukraine. Killed, missing, wounded, and maimed. Record losses since World War II.
Like it or don't like it, it's your duty, my beauty.
And it looks like the Russian population will have to endure this for a long time. The Kremlin doesn't even hide it. They don't keep count of the coffins. To grasp the level of cynicism, take a look at a monument to Russian occupiers in one of the Samara villages. 2 died in Afghanistan, 1 in Chechnya, and already 34 in Ukraine. The monument's creators thoughtfully left space for new names.
24. 4 or 5 more vehicles are coming. Looks like the biggest batch today.
This is the neighboring Ulyanovsk region. Even the hearse driver, who regularly meets planes with coffins, is shocked by the scale of the losses.
In Ulyanovsk, at the airfield today, it's just a nightmare. A huge batch arrived. 2 planes, 180 people, and it looks like 30 vehicles. They've started sending 2 planes at a time.
The Kremlin conceals the real number of dead soldiers, but journalists have identified the names of at least 110,000 killed. These are only those whose names appear on memorial plaques, in obituaries, and in local social media.
This is the statistic tracked by PBS and Mediazone, 2 teams of journalists. They compile it from open sources, public pages, vContact, a Russian social media platform, any established lists of heroes, village WhatsApp chats, anything that leaks out. Of course, these 110,000 are the lower bound. That's the minimum that gets out, I'll say it again. In reality, there are more.
The journalists themselves admit they only publicize the minimum figures, counting only those whose names are verified and deaths confirmed. The total number of Russian deaths could reach 300,000.
It's a very sophisticated, frankly well-crafted propaganda policy, the essence of which boils down to a terrifying thesis. The greater the losses, the more grandiose the victory appears. Over the past 25 years, a paradigm has been formed in Russia where death in war is no longer the worst outcome for a person. The alternative is, you either drink yourself to death, die from drugs, or perish as a hero, getting a chance at a certain social elevator, plus a kind of jackpot in the form of financial benefits for the deceased's family.
And then there's the category of irretrievable losses, wounded, maimed, those who will never return to the ranks. There are even more of them.
The minimalist estimate, I think, is around 200-something thousand killed. That's a lot. A minimalist estimate. Plus, irretrievable losses are much higher. Irretrievable losses are likely 2 to 2 and something times higher. Some might think it's more, some less. But the most conservative estimates suggest that irretrievable losses are approaching 500,000.
If it's hard to believe even the figure of 300,000 dead, your eyes don't lie. This is what the fields near the Ukrainian front look like. The roads are littered with the bodies of Russian soldiers. They're simply not cleared away, and those lucky enough to return home in a bag or a box have every chance of ending up in an impromptu dump.
Krikovenko, AA, Novosibirsk. See, even the name is written.
Son. Here.
The contents of this black bag in a coffin, amidst a pile of garbage, need no comment, and such discoveries are happening all over Russia.
Smivka. So-called Cargo 200. Guardsman, Private Brezhnev. That's how homeland defenders end up in a landfill. In a Chelyabinsk courtyard, a zinc coffin was found in a landfill. The coffin belonged to a serviceman killed during the special military operation. The man's body was brought in this coffin.
May 28th, 2024. A cemetery for unidentified homeless people. Right here, on the territory of this cemetery, lie the transport crates of fallen participants in combat operations in the special military operation, Private Shcherbakov. The crates contain the coffins in which the guys were brought. Senior Sergeant Almayev A.S. This is how they bury people who have no family, no one to bury them.
What's there to say about honors or respect? Pompous funerals with orchestras and officials' condolences are only for propaganda footage. As soon as the cameras turn off, the regime's servants show their usual contempt for the population. Here's an official from Krasnodar Krai admitting in private conversations, everything he does is for show, so the higher-ups don't scold him.
Why should I have to meet with these mothers? I go, bow at their feet, spout all this nonsense. Do you really think I feel guilty? Do you think it's easy to go around, look, and smell that stench from the coffin?
And this is how funerals really go. In the Chelyabinsk region, a hearse got stuck in the mud because the road there gets washed out regularly. The vehicle had to be pushed to the cemetery, where the money for road construction goes, and why Chelyabinsk residents will keep getting stuck in the mud on their way to the cemetery, you'll find out later. Stick around, it's worth it. Meanwhile, the geography of the 200s has shifted over the years of the war. Initially, it was mostly people from poor national republics, Tuva, Buryatia, Bashkortostan. The war became a way for the impoverished population to make money. Now, wealthier regions like Tatarstan have joined in, but the capital remains untouchable as always.
Imagine that these spoiled Muscovites or Petersburgers who have their sidewalks relayed 6 times a year to make them even more glamorous were offered 100,000 or 200,000 rubles to go kill people and possibly get killed themselves. Of course, they'd refuse. That's why recruitment from Moscow is practically zero, and from St. Petersburg too. But when they come to some downtrodden Bashkir in a village, working at a Pyatorochka, a supermarket chain, for 7,000 rubles, some big official shows up and tells him that the country is under attack by terrifying NATO, hands him an accordion, a bottle of vodka, and says, "Go defend."
Money remains the main motive for participating in the war against Ukraine. The recruitment principle has changed.
I know, for example, how they do it in Tatarstan. Their own people don't go anymore, even for big money. Tatarstan is one of the big players, but the biggest payouts come from Moscow and St. Petersburg. They recruit people from other regions, register them in local battalions, and they go as if from Tatarstan. That's why Tatarstan is one of the leaders in deaths. It's just that Tatarstan has the money, so it lures these people. And whoever has more money comes out on top, the main buyer.
It's like a market now. The higher the demand, the pricier the offer. Local governors inflate payout amounts to meet quotas and curry favor with Putin.
This is the marginalized part of Russian society. Not everyone, of course, but it's a significant, large portion. And they're heavily in debt. Those Money Right Now kiosks and similar ones were all over Russia. The scariest thing is that one of these networks was owned by Putin's family, registered directly to Lyudmila Putina. That's a known fact. There were journalistic investigations about it. They got these marginalized people hooked on loans. Just show up with a passport, nothing else needed. Take the money, get drunk, forget about it. That's why a huge number of people go there to pay off debts.
Or you can avoid risking anything and send your neighbor to the slaughter instead. They pay for that too, though less. Here's an official announcement from Tatarstan's website. 150,000 rubles if you condemn someone to death. That is, recruit them for the war.
Man is a wolf to man. That's truly what applies to Russia.
The Kremlin reports, every month they recruit 30,000 new fighters. And they loudly claim they're enlisting volunteers.
Recruit is a very pretty word. It's like saying we managed to recruit people to prison, or how Stalin somehow managed to recruit people to the Gulag. Amazing how he pulled that off, that sly, mustachioed guy. Very simple. When your hands are untied, when you have a law allowing you to sign a contract with someone sitting in a detention center, is that recruitment or what? You don't need to prove their guilt to sign a contract with them. It's not prison. You just need to accuse them of something, some embezzlement, stealing roofing material, anything. Slip a packet of drugs that's lying around in the police station into their pocket, and you can charge them under Article 228. And that's up to a life sentence. You can do anything with that person.
And Russian commanders take full advantage of this anything.
Please. I can't take it anymore. Please. How's that for you? Just shoot me now, please.
Kherson direction, the so-called carousel. A punishment for those who refuse to go on a meat assault. The offender is tied by the legs to a vehicle and dragged across a field, periodically beaten. This is another Russian method of motivating personnel. The pit.
Well, you bastards lying there, we'll cure your bronchitis. You didn't complete the task. Why so quiet? We'll treat you the old-fashioned way, damn it.
Judging by the conversation, these Russians are guilty of weak immunity. Russian commanders have dozens of methods to control their own. Moral humiliation, starvation, exposure to cold, beatings, executions. Or they can save bullets and stage gladiatorial fights in a pit.
The commander said someone's got to kill the other guy here. Who's going to kill who? Hear that or not? Idiots. Whoever kills the other guy gets out of this pit. With hands, with feet. Come on, what are you sitting around for? Finish him.
You understood correctly. To earn the commander's forgiveness and get out of the pit, you have to kill your fellow unfortunate. The order was carried out. Meanwhile, the Kremlin knows about the torture of its own. But they're indifferent to the suffering of the victims of this arbitrariness. Moreover, Putin decided to legalize it through amendments to the disciplinary code. Though, in the document, the abuses are called field guardhouses.
The whole country, our multinational people, supports our heroes.
In words. In reality, they're supported by makeshift crutches, and even the wounded and maimed are sent on assaults. This phenomenon is already called cripple regiments. It's not about self-sacrifice or the propagandistic. We don't care about the cost. It's just easier to report to Kremlin commanders.
As horrific as it sounds for a commander, it's often easier to send soldiers to certain death so they can report. We couldn't complete the order because we simply ran out of people. Just like running out of ammunition. Understand, here a soldier is equated to expendable material. A bullet or a person, it's the same. And if there's even a single combat unit left, whether it moves on 2, 3, or 4 limbs, they'll use it to the last to carry out the order. No, that's it. Goodbye. End of story. They don't care.
And it's calmer for the regime this way. Feeling complete impunity, Putin's warriors practice crimes at home too.
When these SVO guys returned just the day before yesterday, I read in the news somewhere near Novosibirsk, a young SVO guy, 23 years old, came back, raped a librarian in her 50s, and buried her alive in the forest. Then he went back to check if she was dead. She wasn't. When they exhumed her, they found she was still alive in the ground, and there's no public outcry. It's just another thing that happened. These stories are pretty routine now.
Putin has so far managed to keep Russia in two realities. In one, there's war, hundreds of thousands of coffins, and a surge of violence across the country. In the other, illusory prosperity and staged stability.
The so-called Putin stagnation lasted over 10 years. But there was no catastrophe because huge oil and gas revenues were coming in, and those revenues were spent on specific goals. The population felt that life was improving. But over these 3 years of war, Russia's economy has changed drastically. Russia always lived off exports to Europe. That was always the backbone of the Russian economy. Plus, it had to heavily reorient toward a war footing. That's always detrimental to the civilian economy. Plus, it started killing its own people in the war. And Russia already had a bad demographic situation. The war has severely damaged Russia's chances for a good future. It has a future because of its vast territory and population. It will exist. But a good future? That's no longer possible for this country.
2025 is coming. On behalf of all Gen Z, I want to say we're all in shock because we can't afford anything for a basic foundation. Buy an apartment? Of course not. We can live in rentals for 100,000 rubles a month or take a mortgage at 28%. Happy Hunger Games. And here we are, stuck in isolation for the third year. Sure, we can go outside, but we're cut off from the world by massive inflation and prices.
The Central Bank of Russia published a figure that inflation for the poor is 20% annually. Hyperinflation varies. If you're buying a Bentley or Veuve Clicquot, hyperinflation doesn't hit you as hard because those products are already insanely expensive, so they don't rise much. But if you're poor and buying a basic groceries like vegetables, your prices are rising fast.
The cry of the Zoomers. That's what they mockingly call videos like this on social media. Young Russians are realizing there's no bright future to hope for.
I just look at the prices I spent money on before New Year's in 2023 and the prices I spent on before New Year's in 2024. It's two different countries, two different lives. Prices have risen so much that my salary from back then doesn't cover it now, and they don't raise it. Why bother raising salaries? We'll just keep living like this. I'm tired of spending so much money just to exist. I can't afford any rest. I can't afford to go out, walk around, or go to the movies because I'm just spending on food and housing.
20% inflation. That's the price every Russian pays for Putin's imperial ambitions, for Z-patriotism, for silent consent, and even for being outside politics. The 20% that could have been saved for an apartment, Putin takes for the war. He'll reach into every Russian's pocket to fund murder and terror in a neighboring country.
The economy is a complex machine. The main thing to understand is that it's like a bicycle. You have to keep pedaling to move forward. When you produce civilian goods, they go into civilian life, generating revenue for years, through many cycles. But when you build a tank or a shell, you fire it, and it's gone. All the resources, all the money spent on it, die in that moment. They don't return to the economy. They don't work in it. They fall out, burned up.
And here's the promised answer to where the money for repairing the road to the Chelyabinsk cemetery disappears.
When you build roads in the U.S., that's civilian construction. Cars drive on them, goods are transported, Americans move around, and it boosts the economy. In Russia now, all the money goes to the war.
And hearses with dead occupiers have to be pushed to the cemetery by the entire funeral procession. Nothing will change. Million-ruble compensations for contracts are eating up the last of local budgets.
What should go to building roads, maintaining kindergartens, paying teachers and doctors, don't pay teachers, shut down clinics, and instead throw money at anyone passing by? Maybe someone distracted will sign a contract, and then throw that same money at their relatives.
For them, the death of loved ones isn't a tragedy, it's a way to get rich.
My husband died as part of Wagner Private Military Company. A regular assault trooper gets 240,000 rubles. I got the salary. The power of attorney was in my name. It's not a lot of money for me. Their life insurance for a fighter's death is 5 million. They gave it to us in cash. Every penny. I was listed as a recipient, along with his mother. So 50% to me, 50% to her. That's 2.5 million. Obviously, I'm not going to splurge with that. Yes, I ask myself why he died. Let's be honest, for the money. After the 40th day, I flew to the Maldives.
The more cunning ones already know how to turn this into a steady income stream.
I'm over 30, right? What am I supposed to do now if I want an apartment? Where do I get the money? It's easy. You find a man serving in the SVO. He dies, and you get 8 million. Is it a working scheme? Of course. A lot of women are doing it now. Many come with those 8 million and buy some cheap little apartment.
For this inconvenient truth, the realtor who spoke out was charged. They forced her to apologize and sentenced her to corrective labor. But the business of profiting off death isn't so easily stopped. Though even here, mishaps happen. This Russian woman planned to pay for a car with her husband's coffin money, but he went and survived.
I got a car. They brought it from Moscow.
Bought a Nissan Qashqai. Husband's a 200. And she went and bought a car.
Kremlin media are full of stories about cunning wives literally robbing their wounded husbands. But no one sympathizes with the victims.
SVO guys aren't heroes there. They're mercenaries. There's a chasm between the so-called SVO guys, their families, and everyone else. Everyone hates them because only they have money. I mean, outside Moscow and St. Petersburg, of course. Only they have money. Only they buy apartments. They buy expensive groceries and stores. They act like orcs who've broken out of some underworld. Even in their own country, they're called orcs. There were even cases when these mobilized guys came back with money and they were just taxed. Some bandit groups simply took it from them.
But payments have been problematic lately. The amounts for signing contracts are shrinking, and people have to fight tooth and nail to get what's owed.
There are payment issues in several regions now. For example, Bashkortostan, which, as you know, is a leader in the number of war deaths. They had to cut payments by a third. Inflation, new sanctions. It all leaves a serious mark. Plus, the money is losing value. 1 million yesterday isn't the same as 1 million tomorrow because inflation is substantial.
Even lowering interest rates and the illusion of currency stabilization won't save from rising prices. The Kremlin has strong-armed the central bank and is now preparing to fire up the printing press to maintain the illusion of stability.
People in business understood this signal. Russia is heading toward hyperinflation. You need to earn now before your money loses value. So, raise prices today to get money fast, convert it to foreign currency, and get it out of the country while there's still a chance.
And those discharged from Putin's army are shedding tears. They're starting to realize that they, maimed and rejected by society, were used and discarded like spent material.
I'm helpless. They let me out of the hospital for the weekend, out of joy. I can't do anything. Here's my stump. Sleep, eat weekends. Don't go to war, please. Don't go. It's just a contract on paper. They won't ask why you're fighting, what you want. They'll just set a task and drive you forward to kill others, seize territory, and nothing else. On the way, all you see are the bodies of your own people, Russian soldiers. Not killed by rifles, not by people, they're killed by shells. Apocalypse.
The march on Kiev turned into a bloody misadventure for Russia, where human life has lost all value, but death is in demand, even if it's getting cheaper by the day. They trade in the dead, coerce the living, and have turned poverty into a recruitment weapon. While the elites enjoy comfort, ordinary Russians rot in fields, landfills, and mass graves. A system built on lies and violence continues to devour its own. Ksenia Barvanenko. Special Report.